Everything is fine here on Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Mike, joined with Dustin, here to talk Star Wars, here to talk some more Ahsoka. I know we're a week behind on this, but what was it, last week? Not this past Tuesday, but a week ago from Tuesday.
Good things come to those who wait.
Well said. It sounds like something like Balin Skull would say.
So, like, you know, in the year 2078, the Brewers will finally win a World Series.
Doubtful. They would have to lose to themselves first so that they could win the World Series, since every team they lose to in the playoffs wins the World Series. So if you're a betting person, bet on the Arizona Diamondbacks to win it all, and you'd probably win pretty.
I just put my money down on FanDuel, so I find it funny though in sports.
As long as it's not OnlyFans, what you put your money on.
Yeah, we were just on before we got on. We were talking about
a funny story that Dustin was mentioning.
Yeah, there's a teacher like from where I'm from, not the same town, but like the St. Louis region, and she was caught, you know, not like during her working hours as a teacher, but she has an OnlyFans page, and it was a whole thing, and it's actually really ended up very, very well for her because she's like now like in the top 0% of creators. She's making like tons of money, and so
no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, well, the Braves just lost.
Mm.
Phillies are going to the NLCS.
Sorry to my cousins who are Braves fans, but they beat us a couple years ago in the playoffs, so I'm over it.
It is crazy. I mean, that's now the 2 bye week teams got bounced,
and 3 out of the 4 did, because the Orioles got swept.
Yeah,
the Dodgers got swept.
There's something, man. I'm telling you, dude. The Stros are doing something that ain't. Like they sacrificed to Jobu or something like that.
They've proven to do stuff, some extracurricular activities in the past to win. So who's to say they didn't conjure up some Dathomir great mothers, to do some voodoo magic to give them a victory.
Wouldn't put it past them.
And speaking of Ahsoka, we will get to Ahsoka. We'll do a review here in a moment. First, I'll call out, we are live, so bring us your questions, comments, opinions, all of that. I know it's a little later. We're recording a little later due to our children taking forever to go to sleep tonight. But
I gambled, so I like reading my child to some extent, but like he'll just like grab all the books and throw them on his bed and be like, read all this. I'm like, I'm not reading all that. By the time I read all that, it's going to be freaking 2 a.m. Anyway, I play music. Like, you're going to learn Blippi pretty soon.
Oh, I'm sure.
And he's got like a little Halloween album. It's awful. There are some catchy songs, but like they're just, anyone could write them. Like, we should start writing kids songs and singing them.
I'm game. We can probably make some good money doing it, or write children's books.
And we could put them on OnlyFans.
Yes, for a small subscription of $20 a month.
It's funny that
doesn't give you content yet. You've got to pay $50.
The history of OnlyFans was not what it is today. Like, it wasn't created for that, and then it like instantly just became all porn.
Like anything else, just gets turned into something for the wrong reasons.
So, but you know, we're sitting there listening to this music, and I'm like slowly turning it down till like I turn it off, and then like I turn it down to where it's not audible, and then he goes, "Daddy, music!" No, son of a beat.
Look at you censor yourself when we're uncensored. You don't need to do that.
I know. Sorry, it's the dad in me now, I guess. I did say, Jesus effing Christ, go to bed, kid.
Did you actually use the
did.
word? Soap in the mouth for Dustin later tonight.
Yeah, my bad.
Now tomorrow morning he's gonna be like, fucking kidding. We'll see. He's
gonna learn somehow.
But before we get to Ahsoka, I first wanted to call out that the writer's strike ended finally. The actor strike is still going on, but at least the writer strike has ended as of September 27th. So content can start being like written out, stories can be developed, and we can get going on more of these Star Wars shows that continue just to get pushed back. But so the writer's strike started May 2nd and went all the way through September 27th. So it's a long time, but glad to know we're beyond that now, at least for the time being, until the next strike happens. And then I was just kind of checking around Star Wars news earlier today. And since today the Broncos are playing the Chiefs, and the fact that they had this on one of the Star Wars websites made me laugh. It said, the last time the Broncos beat the Chiefs, Star Wars was #1 movie in America. They are playing tonight for Thursday Night Football. So, and just at that time, so going back to that date, Barack Obama was still president of the United States. A gallon of gas was $2.37. Star Wars Force Awakens was the #1 movie, followed by Jurassic World, Furious 7, and Avengers Age of Ultron. And Can't Feel My Face by The Weeknd was the top song. So I love that Star Wars football in it, because obviously we're sports fans. So
I don't know if you watched any of that game, but like Russell Wilson looks so bad. Dude, he looks so bad.
He's been bad since like last year. He was bad last year.
There was a moment that he was getting pressured and like he ducked down like as if he was going to get tackled, and then realized he wasn't getting tackled. So it was like he saw a ghost. Like he literally went like this, like he like ducked down as if he was going to get tackled. And then he tried to run it, and he's not fast anymore. So he got tackled behind the line of scrimmage, and it was 4th down.
Yeah, he's lost speed. He's always been a shorter quarterback. He's not short, but in terms of quarterbacks, he's on the shorter end of the spectrum. And
imagine if you're the Broncos ownership and you gave up all that, those assets to trade for Sean Payton.
When they did that, I was like, ugh, that was a mistake. He was already on the decline, and the Broncos aren't really in a good situation before bringing Russell Wilson in. So,
I mean, the first thing he does is cause controversy, right? He says that stuff about the Saints organization, or no, the Broncos, Hackett and those guys, and and then of course they get beat by the Saints or by Hackett.
I'm assuming the Chiefs won today. They were winning.
They won. It was like 19-8.
Okay.
It was a boring game. I didn't watch it. I had Sutton going, and he did score a touchdown, so that kind of saved my night for fantasy. But anyway, we're not here to talk about all that. We're going to talk about Ahsoka, right?
Nope, we're done. See you later.
I have a lot of thoughts on Ahsoka.
All right. Well, let me first, before we dive in it, I got to put the spoiler tag. We will be talking. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's been a week, but I'll just do it just in case. Just in case. But spoiler tag, we are going to talk episode or
listen to our podcast and you haven't watched the episode. It's a Star Wars podcast. Like, what are you doing?
What are you doing with your life? But we're going to talk about it. So you've been warned. So yeah, just initial thoughts on it before we dive into like reviewing it.
I'm going to say what the kid's saying. Kind of mid. Kind of mid.
Is that on fleek for what kids say these days? On the mid?
I hate you. You took it too far. Yeah, man. Like, I think it's just average Star Wars content at the end of the day. Like, there were some way above average moments, but like my big complaints are like Sabine's character arc, I think, was super uneven. They made Thrawn look like a giant fucking pussy. And Ezra's just kind of, like, oh, I don't want to use a lightsaber, but I'll fucking blast people with a pistol like I'm John Wick, shoot people right in that, oh, the Force is my ally, and then, you turn into John Wick. There's just a lot of weird moments, and then no different with the finale. That, even the ending was kind of, I don't know.
See, now I really liked the show. I did. I thought it was better. I mean, it was better than Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, that's a low standard, though. Like that.
I enjoyed it more than the most recent episode of Mandalorian. I still like my favorite is still Andor. Andor is great. It's fantastic. But in terms of like overall opinion of the show, I would put it not far behind Andor. I will say the last two
I would put it like miles behind Andor.
The last two episodes kind of were not as interesting or not as great as the first 6 episodes. The first 6 episodes, I'm like, I'm loving this show. Like, I'm on the edge of my seat at the end of each episode. I can't wait till the next one comes out. Really impressed with the content we're getting. And then the 7th one hit, and it was like, okay, this kind of a step back, but maybe it was a setup for that final episode. But then the final episode wasn't as grand as I was hoping.
Dude,
I will.
At no point did I ever feel like the main characters were in danger. Like there's,
Well, but they are. It depends on how you define danger. Because now Ahsoka and Sabine are, I mean, they're trapped in a galaxy that they can't get home from.
and she was, you know, Ahsoka's like, good. I'm glad, you know, this is where we belong. What?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what she meant by that, except for like she believes like the Force wills everything. So if we're here, this is where we're supposed to be. That's the only thing I can think of as it relates to that line.
So if I could, I just want to go through my complaints.
Yeah, go for it.
So first and foremost, why does Disney feel like they're like crackheads that need crack when it comes to like they have to put a cute creature, they have to insert it in the story where there's no reason to do that, right? Like we didn't need these little fucking Ninja Turtle things, and none of them died. Like they're literally being shot at by bad guys, and not a single one of them died. Like, I'm sorry, it's not like I'm evil. I want to see him die, but like, there's no impact there, and so, and they have no. There's no reason for them. They don't drive the story forward at all. They're just there to be cute so they can sell fucking merchandise.
Well, I will say to that, do you think we're the target audience of Disney?
I don't. And I know why they do it, right? I know,
Right.
you know, that's why they have the porgs, and that's why they have Baby Yoda and all that bullshit, because they want to sell toys to kids and they want to engage that younger audience. But you also have to like write a compelling story where, I mean, you could do both. You could have these cute characters and make them like a necessary part of the story, but these characters aren't. You know, like Babu Frick's character is kind of a necessary. I mean, he had a good component. Like these guys are just, they have no, like the worst technology possible. I mean, they're driving like giant turds is what they look like, you know, like.
Well, and I think because this is a continuation of Rebels, I mean, it was all but confirmed.
I knew you were going to say that too, right?
But I mean, it's true.
But it's live action. Like, it's live action. You can't get away with that in live action. It's not a cartoon anymore. Like there needs to be higher stakes. Like things need to die.
Well, I mean, it's like if Dr. Seuss starts like doing a live action movie, there's probably going to be a lot of similar elements from his like books that he creates that are brought to the big screen. Because you have to remember, Dave Filoni is heading all of these. So I mean, this is what he's used to. So he's going to bring in some of those elements. Now, I totally agree. Like, as us as viewers, it kind of takes us out of it a little bit. Like what is that? Suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Thing.
Talked about that many times.
Yeah, it takes away from that. But again, like, are we the target audience? We are part of the target audience, but we aren't all of the target audience, because I think the point of Star Wars and the point of Disney, whether it's right or wrong, because I think they do need to hone in a little bit more on the adult end, because look at the success of Andor, and that was more of an adult oriented show, and they still brought in the cute elements with that droid, and they did it in a way that works.
Separate out, like, if you want to make a kid show, make a kid show that you want to get young fans into Star Wars. Do that. Don't Don't insert it into the adult content. Like,
Yeah.
you
And
broke
I
it that way, because then you're separating it, and oh, my son, Bennett, when he's older, he can watch the little Star Wars cartoon, and I'll get him into Star Wars. Like Ahsoka is supposed to be a darker theme, right? Like you're trying to prevent Thrawn from, and that's another complaint I have. We'll get into. I mean, Thrawn is a wet noodle. Like, I mean, he's almost incompetent. It's hilarious how incompetent some of the decisions he makes are. And then Sabine's character arc. It's just she just makes super odd decisions. There's no consequence to her boneheaded decision to basically surrender to this new empire.
well, I think the consequence is coming.
Okay, but again, we haven't seen it. Another thing is she has this just really weird, unnecessary dialogue with Ezra. Like, how did you get here? Let's talk about that later. And how did you get here? Like, how do we go home? Oh, I don't want to talk about it. What are you talking about? Like, that's not a normal way to have a conversation. We talked about this. Like, if I were Ezra, I'd be like, you have to tell me, like, how do we get home? Oh, just trust me. No, I haven't seen you in like a long time. Like, I need to know what's going on. I mean, obviously Balin, if I'm not, I don't want to say this is the opposite of a complaint, right? This is a compliment. Balin was phenomenal. I loved his, and it's just such a bummer. His act, the actors.
Oh, I know. Because it's like
here's another thing about
one of the best things of the show won't be the same.
Yeah.
When there's got to be a season, the way it's ended, there's going to be a season 2. I think that's like 99.9% sure there'll be a season 2. But because we didn't like play out his character all the way through in season 1, there's still more to be determined. And since he's gone, they're going to have to bring in someone else to portray Balin. And whenever they do a casting change, it just never is the same.
I get it, but they're going to have to. So here's another thing about Sabine, right? And this is specifically the very end episode. So there's a scene where she's fighting like the undead death troopers, right? And she gets her lightsaber knocked out of her hand, and she can barely grab it, right? Like, she just gets it the last second and gets the death trooper. And then all of a sudden, the next scene, she's throwing Ezra 40 yards. Like, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. She can just unlock her powers, and there's no like reward. There's no, there's no. I don't believe it. Is what I'm saying. I don't believe that she just earned that power. She didn't earn it, right? That it's not earned. It doesn't feel earned for us as the viewer. It doesn't feel earned for her. Like, they could have spent this whole time building her powers up, but they didn't really. And then, now all of a sudden she's throwing Ezra 40 yards in the air when she could barely in the previous scene pick up her lightsaber with the Force. It's bullshit. It's just straight bullshit. And it's the suspension of disbelief that we talked about that takes you out. I'm like, what are you kidding me? I knew from a mile away that she was going to stay, when Ahsoka, oh yeah,
I did too.
And that was just kind of hokey. And so, a lot of the fight scenes were kind of hokey. There's some good lightsaber battles, but the undead troopers was kind of done a little hokey. How are you gonna say it?
And to note, that isn't new to Star Wars. It's not like they're just now throwing zombies in, because you do see undead.
Oh, I know. We've seen them before.
Oh, I'm just speaking to the listeners. I know because we've watched this stuff together. But
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just Sabine's character arc, I don't feel like it was earned. Ahsoka was kind of weird. Like,
I think that was the point. I think she was supposed to be weird. I don't think she was
the least of my concerns. And let's get to Thrawn. Like,
I agree with you on the whole Sabine power thing. Like that. I didn't even think about your point of her not being able to grab the lightsaber as easily, and then Force pushing Like that's a good valid point. Like, how did that all of a sudden change?
Well, it's kind of like Rey. A lot of people's complain about Rey. It's like she just earns this like insane power, and they just justify it because she's Palpatine.
Well, and it's even different because Rey was an unknown. They've over the top let you know that Sabine is just not powerful in the ways of the Force.
Yeah.
So like, how does she
That's a good
not
point,
have
too.
these
Yeah.
powers and then all of a sudden does? Rey, it was a mystery. Like,
Well, because
okay,
she loves
we don't.
Ezra.
So I didn't think about that. That's an interesting point, Dustin. So I'll give you credit on that one.
So let's talk about Thrawn, right? Like, Mikkelsen,
Mhm.
Lars Mikkelsen.
Lars.
Yeah, I was thinking Madsman. So Lars, fantastic performance. No issue with the actor whatsoever, right? It's just the decisions and the writing don't make sense. Like, so the dude sends ground troops to in the previous episode, or that whatever episode it was.
7.
Yes, so the previous episode to attack them, right? And it would have been fine if they had no TIE fighters, but they had fucking TIE fighters the whole time. Why wouldn't he just send the TIE fighters to destroy him?
Well, I think he alluded to that. They don't. Okay, just kind of going back a little bit further. I will defend a little bit with the Thrawn thing because I don't think this whole conflict really matters to Thrawn. This is just like, these matters aren't really an issue to me because all I need to do is just get out of here.
Okay, so that's a great point. Here's the thing. So like, why isn't when he's in the Star Destroyer, does he not just take out the tower right away?
Well, they're doing the cargo transfer.
Yeah, but like the second they got the cargo transfer, he could have destroyed the tower.
Yeah, he could have. Yeah, for sure.
And then he just waits
as soon as they dock with the Eye of Zion and are like kind of leaving, then they could immediately bombarded the tower for sure.
It seemed like, and he even said it himself, like, it's kind of like, we lost this round, but we still won the war. That's not the Thrawn that you see in the.
Well, I don't think he said we lost because he told Ahsoka that the victory is his because all he needed to do was leave. And
I'm talking about like when he's talking to Elsbeth, Morgan Elsbeth, like, oh yeah, they got us this time, but let's think about it this way. That's just not the Thrawn I'm used to seeing. I'm used to seeing a cutthroat Thrawn, and
I think Thrawn is also patient because he studies his enemy a lot more. And
but they don't
flush that out.
They don't explain that to the viewer. I mean,
and that's why it's important. Like, that's why I feel bad for people who did not watch like Rebels or did not read the books, who don't have like an understanding of like the situation of these characters.
But like, it was hinted that this was Rebels 5, and it did come out, I think, towards like right when the show. They should have made it very clear right from the beginning, like, hey guys, this is live action Rebels season 5.
Yeah.
Like, you should go back or you should watch this content.
And they even did the opposite, because I think Dave Filoni said you don't need to watch it to understand the story, which is true to understand the story. But
imagine you're a viewer that's just coming into this, and you don't know who Thrawn is. You would not think he's a very intimidating character
or a compelling villain.
That is a crying shame. You know how I feel about good villains, right?
Yeah.
Thrawn is an excellent, like, it's Vader, it's Palpatine, it's Thrawn, like in that order, in my opinion, right? And I would put General Grievous like below that, and like Count Dooku in that. They do such a horrible job in this show, and see, this is why I just think it's middle of the pack Star Wars content, because they're missing on all these things that just seem very easily rectifiable, and that's my disappointment. Is like, it's just the writing, it's the execution, and they are doing this thing where they're having all these different directors directing these episodes. Like, can you just make it consistent? Like,
they need to change. They really do.
You just do one director and let them like flush out their vision.
That's on Kathleen Kennedy, I feel like, or at least the higher ups. you gotta do wonder. I get what they're doing by having multiple directors. I understand, but
I'm going to compare it to the St. Louis Cardinals in 2023 because our manager wanted to mix and match everyone, and when they wanted to put people in maybe positions they're not used to, but get them in the lineup, and it was just an incohesive mess because it was hard to build that cohesion because these guys never knew where they're going to play every day, and it was always on their minds of where they're going to play, how things are going to come together, and that's kind of I feel like the same with the Star Wars episodes. All these different directors is like you're getting a lot of piecemeal, unconnected episodes. It's like X-Files, those creature features, if you remember.
Yeah.
Like they never really, and everyone loved those. Those episodes are some of people's favorites. So I'm not criticizing the episodes or X-Files at all. I'm just saying those episodes were standalone and they made no difference to the overall story for the most part. That's kind of what it feels like with this and all these different directors.
Yeah, you wouldn't want multiple cooks cooking a single meal for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great analogy. Then you're going to get that scene from Waiting.
Yeah. So I do think that's something that they need to change, at least in their production. And that, again, that comes from the higher ups. That comes from Kathleen Kennedy. That comes from the leadership of Disney and everything. Like, you got to streamline this. And it does help just having one person, Dave Filoni, because he was the writer, right? He was the writer for all of this, and then they had different directors. Isn't that right? So at least they had a consistent writer. But
so going back to Sabine real quick too, at the very end of the episode, right, where she's like looking out, above the cliff, and then and Ahsoka's like, what's going on? And she does the same thing she's done the whole fucking series. That just drives me nuts. Oh, nothing. Oh, nothing. What? Why do you even have to keep that a secret? You know what I mean? Like, just say it.
Well, maybe she doesn't know.
Dude, she knew. And like I think they're trying to like, because they did with Anakin, like she's seeing Anakin, or like she's.
I don't think she's seeing Anakin.
Well,
I think
I don't know either, because she couldn't have the balls to say what she was feeling.
I think she's feeling the same thing Baylan felt. I think she feels a call.
Then why would you not say that to Ahsoka? I feel this weird. It makes no sense. Again, it makes no sense why she would keep it hidden.
Yeah, you would want to. It's like a working environment. You want to have an open dialogue with your manager on what's going on. And if Ahsoka is Sabine's master, you need to communicate these things. That's what you're trying to say, right? It doesn't matter what her attention is being brought to. She needs to relay that information to her superiors.
It's not even that, man. It's like, it's just that she's doing it over and over and over again. There's not really a compelling reason. It's like she's a petulant child,
Well, she's always, in my eyes, she's always been like that rebellious teen. She doesn't follow rules. She does things her own way, which has definitely kicked herself in the butt once in a while. And I think we have to remember too, like, she's not a Jedi like all the Jedi we've known. She's a Mandalorian, and she's recently lost all of her family. Well, I don't know if recently is the right word, but we know she lost her family. Was it the Night of 1,000 Tears when the Empire essentially destroyed Mandalore, which what we saw elements of that in the Mandalorian as well. So
another thing that made no sense to me, and I don't know if I discussed this the last time, but like, we know that the season takes place after the Mandalorian. Well, so we know that Mandalore was retaken and is going to be, and they never mentioned that.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know how that all.
We know it's after the season 3 of the Mandalorian, because they even said it in the little tribunal, the fucking kangaroo court that they had. It was a joke. You know, they mentioned like, oh yeah, you know, the Mandalorians have retaken Mandalore. They said that.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I mean, I know Sabine lost her family, but at least you would know that like her homeworld is you know being
Yeah.
recolonized or whatever, and then the Mandalorians are starting to.
But what matters more to you, like the city of St. Louis or your family?
Uh,
The fact that you have to wait a second to say that. I guess how you react with sports sometimes, maybe the city of St. Louis matters more. No, I'm kidding.
I was just thinking about in the context of you know Sabine.
I just think we have to remember when it comes. I'm not saying you're wrong. I think you're making all valid points, and many of them I do agree with you. I'm just trying to pull in other perspectives here. I think we also have to remember that Sabine has always lost anyone that's ever been close to her, whether it's her family, whether it's her friends, even her master. Ahsoka bailed on her for a while.
And that explanation,
her family even exiled her because going back to the Rebel show, you know, she was building weapons for the Empire that ultimately destroyed her homeworld at the time. That was before the 1,000 Tears situation.
So another thing I want to talk about, positive and negative. Positive, like a lot of the visuals are stunning. But then there's that weird scene in the last episode where they're like talking on the ship. They're like standing out in like the wing. That was awful. That was awful CGI.
Was that at the beginning when they were hovering over the
over the little the fucking Ninja Turtles?
Nodi? Is that what they're called?
I don't even want to call them anything.
Hey, they can't help themselves. They didn't create themselves.
But you know what I'm saying? Like they were on the wing talking, you know, it was awful. The CGI was, I mean, you could tell like it was a rolling green screen. That's how bad it was.
I had more
Took me out of the episode.
In terms of visuals, I had more of an issue when they were in those scenes, like in the tower fighting the night troopers, because you could definitely tell that that was like a studio, in my opinion. Yeah. I think all of the, like a majority of all the other visual effects we got have looked amazing. Again, like episodes 1 through 6, I don't have many flaws in all those. And even the visuals and all those were amazing. But when I was watching that final part 8, that scene came and I'm like, oh, this just does not. And it just seemed rushed too, because it's like, you know, they got that blessing from the great mothers, and then all of a sudden they're in the fight. It's like, oh, we're just jumping there right now. And so that whole kind of sequence kind of bothered me in part 8.
So let's talk about Ezra.
I'm fine with Ezra. I actually like Ezra.
I'm fine with Ezra. He makes some weird like facial.
Yeah, but that's him. That he did that in Rebels too. He was like that weird quirky guy. He would like, you know.
Yeah, maybe I'm just not remembering, but like in live action, it's kind of weird. We're like, you know, he's like looking, he's like,
I think that's him. I think I agree. It's like really weird.
Like
but
he sees like Ezra, he sees the two like, you know, mercenaries, and he's like,
Ezra is like that guy.
Are those your friends?
Ezra is that guy that thinks he's funny that's not funny. You know what? Like that friend that you have that thinks he's funny and just isn't, does all these quirky things. Like that's him.
Yeah,
that's Ezra.
Like, again, if I'm sitting in Ezra's shoes and you know I'm asking someone a question, they're not answering me, I just don't go, okay, we'll just wait till you're ready to talk about it. But that's just me, maybe. I mean, but here's another thing, okay? I don't know how long it takes to get from Dathomir to wherever they were.
Permidia?
But like, I know it takes long enough for you to sit and think, maybe I shouldn't be wearing this night trooper armor while I'm getting out of a literal, you know, Imperial ship.
Hey, that's valid.
What the fuck? Like,
That's definitely
And,
valid.
see, this is my problem. The only reason they did that was to, have this like reveal,
Yes.
right?
That's for the
Like,
audience. That's not
it's
for the story.
worse if you do it though with no explanation as to why, like, he would do that. Like,
Okay, that's another completely valid question. Yeah, you're just asking for guns to be pointed at you and risking you being killed at that situation versus just coming out who you are.
yeah, like he comes out like with his hands up like this. Take your helmet off, dude. Like, I understand. See, this is my problem. I understand why they did it. I
Yeah.
just don't. They don't do a good job of executing
Yes.
where it's something that I like enjoyed the reveal. I didn't enjoy the reveal because I'm like, this is fucking stupid.
100% valid. That's a good point.
And then like, and here's another thing. They had this like moment, him and Syndulla. He should have said like at the very end, he should have whispered, Thrawn is back. Like something of impact.
And maybe they did. They just didn't. They didn't even come. I mean, they just said I'm back or whatever, and then they cut away. So
yeah, and he should have said Thrawn is back. That would have been so much better. Like as far as the weight and the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another good point, but I don't know. I've never been in that situation. I'm trying to put myself in the place of him. Like you are seeing kind of like you're
like the first thing he should think about
I
is
know
the galaxy,
but,
not himself.
But he's not.
You're not supposed to have those emotions as a Jedi.
But he wasn't raised under that. He would. I forget.
I know.
I think it's called.
I'm poking fun at the Jedi. Now,
I know.
I love Balin's like the Jedi suck. We need to do something better. Like I love that so much. I wish they would flesh that out a little bit more.
Were you nervous we weren't going to get any Balin in that last episode?
Kind of. I mean,
I was because I'm like, we have 48 minutes for this episode and we have not seen Balin. Like, what the heck? We're not going to get anything here.
He's just like on a dude's hand, the father.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was cool.
There's so many good, like
a little light in the distance. That was well done.
See, that's what's compelling. Like, what is that? Is that literally like the Father or the Son or like
Holy Spirit?
Or is that the mother? Is that something else? Like, what is that that's calling? I mean, obviously having that like Mortis trilogy reference through those statues is somewhat of an indication of what's calling him, but we still don't know what. So yeah, I mean, his story has kind of been the most compelling thing about this show. I always think that's funny because
I think bar none, it is the most compelling thing. Let's talk about Shin for a second. I mean, like, one scene we get of her is that she goes to the mercenaries and just shows her lightsaber, and then apparently that means like they're supposed to like if that's the case, why didn't the Jedi just be like, "Well, here's my lightsaber, and you have to follow me now"? Like, why did they just have the lightsaber off? Where they're just like, "Who can lift it higher?"
I was kind of underwhelmed there because, based off of what Balin said, like she's supposed to be taking some sort of high rank in the Empire, like because when they parted ways, he's like, "Call it in and take your place among like I forget what term he used, but like the high ranks of the Empire.
Take your place amongst the new Empire," or something like that.
Yeah, meaning like being a predominant figure. And then the next we see her, she's with like lowly.
Maybe she's gonna start her own empire.
Yeah, she's gonna start her own. Maybe. But I was kind of underwhelmed by that. I think there's still obviously more to her story to be told, and I think we'll get more of that as things go on. But
I mean, I would have thought it would have been better if she just surrendered to Ahsoka, like that, and when she got beat, that would have been more compelling to me.
That would have been interesting. It would
have been a nice like juxtaposition of when,
a surrender, like she actually is surrendering, or like she's playing it off like she's surrendering.
Either or they could make work. right?
Mhm.
Like, she just drops to her knees and like drops her lightsaber and like just she's defeated. That would make
Mhm.
sense to me.
Mhm.
I mean,
And there's more to her story that's going to be told one way or another.
what do you think's in those coffins? Those
I
the
think it's like an undead army that they're
Yeah,
going to release.
I think that's the consensus.
I don't know if it's necessarily stormtroopers. Maybe it is, or like night troopers or whatever they were called. But I
I think
don't
it's
think
something.
what?
I think it's like old Dathomir warriors is my guess.
Yeah, it could be that because this is the home planet of the Night Sisters. So it definitely could be. And I mean, I think it's intentional that we don't really know what's in there. We're probably led to believe one thing, but it's going to be something else. So it might be more along the lines of what you're thinking. I think the common viewer would be like, those are like the dead stormtroopers from, their ship since they've been there. But it's probably something else.
So another thing I have a complaint about is just the Disneyfication of, she cuts down Morgan Elsbeth, and it's just so Disneyfied, right? Like it's just a brief yellow line. It's just so cartoony.
Well, lightsabers cauterized, man.
I mean, we saw, Darth Maul get cut in half.
Well, I think that was the intention of having like her cut twice. Like this is ensuring that she's dead.
I don't know. I saw that and I'm like, that's lame.
How about the call out to the blade of Talzin though?
Yeah, that was cool. But
I
can
mean,
you imagine though, like you're Morgan Elsbeth's character, and you get these really cool powers, and then you die like 2 scenes later.
that was a question I had. So in my interpretation, Morgan was more of a pawn, both from Thrawn and from the Great Mothers. Like she was a means to an end. She's getting them back to the other galaxy. Yet the mothers still rewarded her with the blade of Talzin, which the mother is a prominent figure. Mother Talzin is a prominent figure within at least what we know of the Night Sisters. So it's like, why would you, unless they can conjure that blade up again, because it was like dark magic, maybe they can conjure it up again and provide it to someone else. I don't know, but it just, that ritual we went through seemed very thorough for someone that was just going to be pawned off essentially. Because Thrawn was like, yeah, we're going to need you to buy us more time. In other words, we're leaving you behind. And
But see, that's another thing. Like that's just so unthrawn like. Like, please, can you go fight these guys? Because we gotta.
yeah, but it's also a little menacing.
Seems like he's so reactionary in the show as opposed to.
But it's also menacing because she adhered to it. Like she knew what it meant, but she was still
For the Empire.
fearful of him that she submitted to it. You know what I mean? Like that tells you what kind of power Thrawn has over an individual. Like you're gonna die.
That's not my sense of what happened. But by the way, he should have been like, yeah, I need you to sacrifice yourself. I do need that blade of Talzin back. So
It reminded me of the Office Space. Like I'm gonna need that stapler.
yeah, I'm gonna need
You come in on Sunday.
I'm gonna need you to come on Saturday and sacrifice yourself.
That was kind of the
Overall,
vibes I was getting.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the viewers who loved the show. I was quite disappointed with a lot of the choices by the characters, some of the CGI, the execution of certain things. If I were to give the episode a rating, it'd probably be a 5, or just the season in general, a 5 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah.
1 through 6, you were like You
But
were
the
giddy
ending was
about it.
it was so disappointing. I mean, the last 2 episodes are so disappointing.
So the last 2 episodes erase all of the momentum that the first 6 episodes had for you.
Absolutely. They need to stick the landing, and they belly flopped into a pool of jello.
Well, does that still hold true? Like, say there's a season 2 that comes out. There's still more to be told to this story.
Okay, but like we know Disney, you can't assume like don't write shows like that. Like tell us right away. Like there's going to be multiple seasons, because then I feel better.
There's going to be multiple seasons. I can tell you that.
Well, I wish Dave Filoni and
Well, they can't because the writer's strike was going on.
What's that?
So they couldn't because the
What do you
writer's.
mean? Yeah, there's going to be a second season. Like,
Well,
the strike is going to eventually end.
It takes me back. I think it was during the Star Wars celebration this past year. Rosario Dawson was talking to like the crowd and everything, and she made some kind of comment about like, you know, go watch Ahsoka because based off of the reaction, like viewership and everything, there could be a season 2. That alone tells me there's going to be a season 2. That was just kind of like a ploy to like gain more viewership. But I don't know. I think the original intention was always multiple seasons in my eyes. But
Okay, Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel?
In your eyes, I am complete. Your eyes.
Did he just pass? No, he didn't pass away.
Oh God. Oh, don't manifest that into the world.
No, who was it that just passed away?
I don't know.
It was like 80s music star. Well, there was a female that passed away. What was her name?
I don't even know what day it is.
October. Actually, it is October. I was just thinking Billy Madison.
First of all, that's month. That's what month it is.
I know, but you remember what day is it today? And then in Billy Madison, he's like October? Nudie Magazine Day.
By the way, you know what tomorrow is?
Friday,
The
13th in October.
Yeah.
So what's his face is going to be coming out? Jason? It's Jason Friday the 13th.
Jason Voorhees. So anyway, yeah, I mean the last 2 episodes did a lot of harm to my overall feeling of the show. And even if there's going to be season 2 and they wrap that up, I mean I can only give you a standalone assessment of the first season because I don't have the second season to compare it to.
And I'm just going to say, give it time. I think a lot of that stuff will be vetted out in the upcoming season. One of the things that
It doesn't mean I'm not going to watch the second season.
No, I know.
I'm just saying
You're a Star Wars fan. You're going to watch it all.
Here's the thing, like it's okay. Like I understand, you know, not everything can be gold, but I just think that with the source material that they had, the momentum that they had from just how great Rebels was, they just missed the mark for me.
Well, I think the thing I'm most excited for, and I am surprised that they went to this level, introducing a whole new galaxy. And they even made
With
reference
almost no fanfare. Like zero fan. They're just like, yeah, we're going to a new galaxy. And then they get there and like, oh, I guess we're here.
Yeah, but
not once did someone just say, holy fucking shit, we are in a completely different galaxy. How cool is that?
But I think in the eyes of these characters, they were already aware that there were other galaxies. Like they knew of this. We as the viewers didn't know about that.
No in the show had been to another galaxy before.
No, but they knew of it.
I know Mars exists. If I go to Mars, I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm on fucking Mars.
Yeah, but if you had people coming after you to kill you, wouldn't you be more like, how do I get out of here?
I mean, sometimes you still got to stop and smell the roses.
Okay, so if you were watching an episode and they were like stopping to smell the roses, would you like that? Would you want them to be walking around? This is beautiful. This is amazing. We're on a new galaxy.
It's just one piece of dialogue. This like, yeah, holy shit, we're in a new galaxy.
Just one line and that's it.
Well, by the way, here's another thing. This is okay. So we have this like existential threat of Thrawn, right?
Yep.
I want him to win. I hate the New Republic. Like, I don't feel any connection or love for the New Republic, right? I think they're incompetent morons.
Well, we know the New
who
Republic
actually could
loses.
take over.
We know the New Republic loses. And we know that from Force Awakens.
I know. I'm just saying, like in the original trilogy, we want the good guys to win because, we believe in that.
We believe that the Empire is like this tyrannous government structure that's.
But it's also that I believe
people.
in the good. I believe in the good guys. I believe in what they're about. I don't believe in the New Republic. Like, it's an incompetent bureaucratic mess, and I don't care that it gets destroyed. And because of that, like the end of the episode, like Thrawn gets away and he's like, "I win." I'm like, good.
Well, I am still curious about how Thrawn's character plays out.
Like, do you remember at the end of Empire Strikes Back, like how that made you feel? We were like, oh my God, like the good guys lost, bad guys won, and I'm sick to my stomach about it.
It was the same way I felt at the end of Infinity War. Like, mad.
Not a great example. But here's the thing. I felt the opposite of that, where I'm like, can you imagine going back to Empire Strikes Back and going, good for you, Vader. Good for you, man.
Well, but I will say
people that actually did that, but like,
what I will say, what I'm liking about a lot of these shows, and I think Andor is doing it. I think this show did it. I'm trying to think what other shows, essentially giving insight that the Empire, in one way or another, isn't more different than like, or wants different things than what we want. I think the difference maker is that like Palpatine is like heading the Empire, but that's all behind like, smoke and curtains. Like, the Empire doesn't necessarily realize that. The Empire is just built of average Joes and Janes going about their everyday life, wanting kind of similar things, but just in a different manner. So I love that these shows are kind of like playing with your thought process on like, all right, who actually is the bad guys and good guys? Obviously, we know who the truly the good guys are, but these shows are starting to make you think like, all right, are the good guys not necessarily doing good things all the time? Or maybe the bad guys are doing some good things? It's kind of invoking those questions a little bit.
This doesn't get enough credit in The Last Jedi, but the scene where they're in the ship going to Canto Bight or leaving Canto Bight, and the one guy,
oh yeah,
he's explaining to like the girl, like
they're the same.
Yeah, the weapons people sell them to the Empire, they sell them to the Republic. There's no difference. That was a really cool, I thought, insight into the universe. That
agreed.
Again, it was just one off. It was one piece of dialogue. It was just kind of like here and gone, and didn't really have any impact to the entire story. That they could have maybe fleshed out that idea a little bit more.
Yep.
And then just the whole Canto Bight scene in general was just so bad.
So bad. But yeah, but it's to that point that I'm getting at. Like, when you are trying to, or when you start feeling sympathy for the Empire, or you start questioning the motives of the rebellion or the Republic, like, that's fascinating to me. It's putting these different sides on a more equal playing level.
Yeah, when you and I have talked about that, the Thrawn books do just an excellent job of
Absolutely.
like humanizing the Imperials. That really just, I mean, if you imagine the U.S. like we think we're out there going to, civilize the world, and sometimes, I mean, that's the nationalism that everyone kind of has. Like that, we have that feeling that we're doing what's best for
the right thing.
Yeah, so I like that they can bring that into the fold with the Empire because, in reality, like there are probably some planets that are really appreciative of being under the Empire's watch,
Mhm.
because it's now there's order and they do, mention things like that, but
Well, and really, I mean, what's wrong with order? I think order is fine. It's just sometimes the methods that are used to bring about order is what's in question. But like, who doesn't want order or prosperity within the galaxy?
I mean, like, we know what's going on in Israel right now. Hamas bombed Israel. Like, if you think about it in this context, like the rebels are kind of like Hamas in the sense, like they're kind of terrorists a little bit, like to the Empire. And that's if you think about it that way, it kind of puts it into perspective, But in the show, they just they do a lot to make the Empire feels so evil, right?
Yeah.
It's not always black and white, and that's
there's
something I
always
really
two sides
appreciate.
to every story.
Yeah.
And perception is reality. So whatever, well, I know the saying's perception is reality. I like to change it to
Yeah, look at
your
old man Lincoln.
old man Lincoln back there, the white
I can
face,
hear
the
the
goat.
creakiness.
I like to change.
Lincoln,
He
I
can't
miss
hear
you,
you. He's got
buddy.
headphones. Even if
You have your
it was
headphones
through
on.
my speakers, he wouldn't be able to hear you. Or hearing. Anyways, I like to change that saying to your own perception is your own reality, because I think there is a difference there. But I mean, depending on where you're raised, you might look at things differently, because if you grew up in Palestine, you would probably look at Israel in a different lens versus if you grew up in Israel, you
Yeah,
would look at
absolutely.
Palestine. And that's the problem, that you can never get on equal, perception, which means that there will always be conflict.
This is saying, like, you got to put yourself in another man's shoes, but no one ever actually does that.
Well, yeah.
And I'm not.
Look at
It's really hard to do.
Look at the Death Star, because there were employees on the Death Star that had nothing to do with like the actual Empire.
Yeah,
And
there was a little. There's a fry cook that got vaporized for nothing.
For nothing. And then
there's an OnlyFans model that got vaporized on the Death Star for no reason.
And they've got a family, and their family's going to be like, these rebels, they're killers. And I mean, look at Saw Gerrera's group. Like, I mean, definitely morality or the right thing isn't necessarily what's top priority for Saw Gerrera or his crew. It's the mission. It's the objective. That's all that matters. So like, there's elements of what we consider the Empire and brutal tactics that the Republic or the rebels do as well. So
yeah.
It's all a matter of perception or what side you fall on. So, how much more time you got?
I'm running thin here.
Okay. Well, because I did want to do kind of a review. So if you want to drop off, you can, and I'll just continue through that review.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been up since 5 something in the morning, so I'm kind of losing steam.
I remember you mentioned that you were up till 5, so I don't want to keep you on. The only other thing I did kind of want to talk about with this episode, and it does deal with Balin and kind of that calling.
Yeah, I mean, we can always table it to the next episode because.
Well, that's true, because we won't have content. We won't have content, so maybe I'll do that. I'll table it and pick your opinion. Hopefully, we'll have. Well, Zach won't be back until end of October, early November.
I didn't even know we had co-hosts anymore. I thought it was just you and me.
Well, we're changing our recording dates to Thursdays, which will open it up for both Greg and Zach. So hopefully they'll be able to start joining us again.
No, I know.
I know you're being.
Probably will never hear this, so I'm just giving them shit.
Well deserved, because you and I have been running the show for the past couple of months. So
But it was your and I's, original idea, right? So we had a.
well, that's true. That's true. And I'll keep doing it because I love doing it. So
I do too.
did you see my Ahsoka helmet over here?
I did. Pretty sweet, dude.
That was a recent purchase. So I thought it was appropriate for this.
I have 2 kids. I can't afford anything discretionary. I
Gift
did
card-
buy. I did
gift
buy.
cards. I didn't spend $1 of my own money. It was gift cards.
I bought those adjustable dumbbells. Like you
Adjustable
can,
dumbbell.
like twist the thing. and
Oh,
then-
sure. And then it's a different weight. Yeah,
pounds
yeah,
for
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Because I was like, I could go do I don't need like some people need like to go to a gym, like they need that. I don't. I just need
Out of my home.
So like, I've been running, that's been great, but I want to like start lifting, and I bought that in the bench, and I feel like I can do everything I need to do with just a couple of
Yeah.
dumbbells.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm gonna hop off here. I gotta brush my teethies, and
Brush your teeth. You got to jump off because you got to brush your teeth.
I gotta brush my teethies.
That's less captivating than your explanations of why this show fell short. So
I
just say you go to bed. You were up till 5, not because you got to brush your teeth.
It wasn't. I was up till 5. I got up at.
Or you got up at 5.
I was up till 5. I'd be fucking sleeping right now.
Yeah. But yeah. So I will let you go, and I will
Are
continue.
you gonna do the review then, or do you want to save that for next?
No, well, just because I don't want to wait. Like, no one's going to be interested in a review like weeks after the actual episode.
We're giving spoiler alerts. Do you see the irony?
I will push through this review, and then I'll call it a day. Plus, I spent all this time writing all these notes. I don't want it to go to waste.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I wish I could stay on, but yeah, I'm kind of.
I won't be on much longer, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see you next week. Yeah, that's what. Good luck to your fantasy team this weekend.
Yeah, I'm done. I mean, I'm 0-5. Like, there's
no, you're not done. You just got to make the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't really looked at the league, so I don't know how everyone else is doing. Like, you start off really strong, and they kind of you're 3-2 now.
Oh, I've been strong all year, but I just get the wrong matchups. Just look at my points against.
Yeah, well, my
points for are like almost 100 beyond the next person, but or something like that.
So my points for, I'm at the very bottom, 576. So
my average score per week is 162 points.
I am the lowest scoring team, so I do actually deserve to be at the bottom. But
look at my points for and points against, and compare that to the rest. So if you're on the app, so you're seeing this. There's view standings. Click that, or view details. Sorry, view details, and then you'll see PF and PA.
Yeah, so there's only 3 teams in our league that have had 700 points. 4 teams. 4 teams out of the 10 that have had 700 or more points scored against them. It's you, me, Utopian, so your brother. I think that's your brother, right?
Yeah, that's my brother.
So your brother and I are at the fucking bottom. There's a lot of 2 and 3 teams, 3 and 2. I mean, there's really nobody that's like really separated, like 4 and 1. But I mean, dude, look at like. He gives me flowers. He scored 665. Well, he's only had 599 against him.
Yeah, which means he's played bottom of the pack teams. Just give him a couple more weeks when he plays the good teams. Because look, my points for, I'm in 3rd place. My points for are 759, which is more than anyone else. But then if you look at my points against, 786.
Like Jamar's attacks, like he's only had 543 points scored against him. That's the lowest of any team.
Yeah, I've had 240 points more scored against me than him. But give it to the rest of the season. That will all flush out. And I think, what is it? The most points scored in the year gets like a $50 bonus. Is that what it was? Yeah, and I'm playing Mac 10 this week, who's the set. So everyone I end up playing scores like 160 or 170 points. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Hi, man.
All right.
Audi 5000.
What's that?
I said I'm Audi 5000.
Audi 5000. Well, we will see you next week. So
On this episode of Go Fuck Yourself.
go fuck yourself. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So I will continue on really quick. As I mentioned, I'm going to just kind of push through this review. I made all these notes before jumping on, and I just want to kind of speak through them, do our normal review. All right. So the episode starts and Thrawn's destroyer, so the Chimara, is docked with the tower, and the night troopers are shown loading cargo. Morgan informs Thrawn that the cargo transfer is complete, and Thrawn approves and asks his captain, which is Captain Enoch, to bring the Eye of Zion out of orbit. And this is so they can begin the interlocking procedure to get out of this planet. So Enoch says they have a fix on the Jedi's position, and Thrawn says to launch 2 of the TIE fighters to go engage them. So they've located the threat, meaning Ahsoka, and we know that Thrawn doesn't really want to expend too much of his resources, meaning his army or his soldiers. So they only launched 2 TIE fighters. And Morgan mentions there's little the Jedi can do to stop us now. And I love this line that Thrawn gave because I think it's very insightful. I think I have a little bit different of opinions on Thrawn in this show from Dustin. I think Dustin was a little underwhelmed, not by the acting or anything, but just the character of Thrawn himself. I thought Thrawn, to me, it matched the character that I thought of. Very strategic, very intentional, very wise. Like, he's not going to lose resources if he doesn't need to, because their overall objective is just to get out of here. They don't care about destroying or engaging the Jedi, because that only imposes more of a threat to their current situation by losing some of their resources. But so Morgan says there's little the Jedi can do to stop us now. And Thrawn responds, I've watched many Imperial officers make similar assumptions about the rebellion. Even I fell victim to the heroics of a single Jedi. Never again. Meaning, do not underestimate these people. You might think like this is some petty a fight ahead of us, but they're stronger than you think. And they can come out of this victorious. So be very intentional, be very strategic in how you handle these. So Thrawn then tells the Great Mothers that their alliance has been very beneficial. So he's like thanking them for all that they've done. And then the mothers thank both Thrawn and Morgan for their contributions. And then they ask Morgan to come forward and tell her that she shall be rewarded with a gift of shadows. So I just had a train of thought and I totally lost it. But as I spoke to before, I feel like Morgan was kind of a pawn in all of this. Like, this is, I know they're doing this like ceremonial rewarding her for her contributions, but I still think she was more of a means to an end. So the Great Mothers in this situation, they ask her, meaning Morgan, are you prepared? Morgan says, yes, Great Mother. Then the Great Mothers, do you pledge yourselves to the sisterhood, to the magics, to the old ways? One thing I noticed, because I had captions on this, magics, MAJIKS. So maybe I'm just unfamiliar with this, but is that, I'm going to look it up really quick. Spelled it. Thought it was interesting the way they spelled that. It's almost as if it was a noun. and not like magic. Anyway, so if you know why it was spelled Majiks, let me know. Anyway, so do you pledge yourselves to the sisterhood, to the magics, to the old ways? Morgan responds, I do. And then the great mother said, do you abandon your old life for this new one? So giving this impression that there's this other long-term life story that's to play out beyond this. But we know that might not necessarily be the case. Anyways, Morgan says, I do. And then the great mother say, your loyalty, your life. And Morgan responds, my loyalty, my life. So this is obviously a ceremony that they're conducting to bring her into this new level of the Sisters of Dathomir to the mothers, like she's becoming one of them in a whole new way. And then the great mothers begin this dark magic on her. Morgan transforms with this black and green magic, and she has like these new face paintings that show up. And the mothers also create a gift, which is a sword out of this magic. And this was awesome. And we kind of spoke to this earlier. It was the blade of Tolzien. So if you've watched the show Rebels, you might be familiar with the great mother Tolzien, who's kind of the head of the Night Sisters on Dathomir, and that whole confrontation and conflict with Maul and well, more so with Dooku. Maul was just kind of a brother to all of them. But so really cool that name drop of Tolzien in the show, really connecting the Rebels or Clone Wars. And the mothers then tell Morgan to take it, meaning the sword, which she does. She wields it and bows. And what I thought was fascinating in all of this, like, so they're showing all these events take place. And then at one point in the middle of all of it, they kind of pan to Thrawn. And Thrawn looks a little unsettled, like, what's going on here? And I find it fascinating because I have to believe that, Thrawn is someone that is very knowledgeable. He likes to study his opponents, analyze, and all of that. But something he really hasn't been able to understand is like the Force or magic. And I think this kind of intimidates him a little bit. So I thought that was very intentional that they showed Thrawn looking a little unsettled while this was taking place. Like, should I be threatened by this in one way or another? So I thought that was interesting. And then it pans out and you hear the Star Destroyer alarm kind of sound. So that we've heard it in many shows or movies when it revolves around the Empire. And then it focuses on Thrawn. He's got a grin on his face as 2 TIE fighters launch out of the Donkey Bay. Then we cut to the title screen and the name of the episode, which is The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. And it's hard not to think of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when you hear that. Like, was this just a ripoff of that? If it was, I'm sure it's very much intentional. And it probably is on a deep level because we're in a whole new galaxy. If you've seen the movie or read the books, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, like, the kids enter the wardrobe and they enter into this whole new world realm, which could be that whole new galaxy. So it's probably very intentional, but hard not to chuckle a little bit when you heard that. Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe, the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. It's all too similar. All right, and then we cut to Ahsoka's ship hovering over the Nodi creatures, which are those little, as Dustin called, Ninja Turtle creatures. They've got that little caravan going, and Ahsoka's ship is kind of hovering over it, escorting and protecting them. Inside the ship, Ezra is building and working on a new lightsaber with Hu Yang. So we recall that there's that interaction between him and Sabine. Sabine's like, take your lightsaber, and Ezra's like, no, I've got the Force. You know, you've been training with that. That's your lightsaber now. So here he's building a new one, and he's kind of like rushing through it. He knows there's like a threat over the horizon, and he's like, I need to get this done. Hu Yang's like, slow down, like, and Ezra's like, I've got a process, and Hu Yang's like, it's not a process. You got your methods or whatever, but it's not a process. Kind of making fun of him a little bit. And Hu Yang kind of warns him against like rushing as he builds his lightsaber. And he asks him, who taught you? Who taught you how to build a lightsaber? And then Sabine walks in, and she gives that answer by saying Kanan Jarrus. And then Hu Yang is kind of like, ooh, is that so? He's like taken back by this, like interested. And then Ezra tells Hu Yang that Kanan was his master, and that Kanan taught him everything he knows. And Hu Yang's like, oh, well, I taught everything that he knows, meaning Kanan. And Ezra is kind of taken by that and asks him, how old are you? And then he responds, old enough to know that the relationship between a master and an apprentice is challenging and is meaningful. And I thought that was a pretty good line to say right there, especially with Sabine in there, because you pan to Sabine and she's kind of got this expression on her face like, yeah, this rings true to me. And she's obviously contemplating, you know, her relationship with Ahsoka and kind of like taking it in. So was that intentional from Hu Yang as a message to both Ezra and Sabine? I don't know, but it definitely can be interpreted that way. And we then see Hu Yang. This was probably the coolest part of this. Well, no, I'll say that line was pretty cool because, but this was taking you back to Rebels a little bit. So Hu Yang hands over an emitter to Ezra for the lightsaber, which is what he's looking for. And Ezra's like, that's it. That's what I was looking for. And then Hu Yang tells Ezra that it was Kanan's and that he should have it. So if I recall, they had two of these. So Kanan had one on his lightsaber, and then Hu Yang kind of had like a backup one. So then he thought it was appropriate that Ezra gets this, and he uses it to finish his construction of the lightsaber. And then Ezra ignites the saber, and it's blue, which is also very curious. So we know the lightsaber that Sabine has from Ezra is a green color. And if you go back to Rebels, Ezra's original one was blue. So that was kind of like that saber he had that was also a gun. So he would shoot it and then, you know, I don't think we've seen a gun / saber before. So that one was pretty cool. But so it begs the question, when it got broke or got destroyed in Rebels, did he hold on to that kyber crystal that was blue, or did he find a new one? So in my head canon, I'm thinking it was his original one that he's kind of hold on to that he's using now for this new saber. So upon igniting the saber, Hu Yang tells him, well done, and that he must have been a good student. I think he's a good student. I think he's a little unhinged and has different methods at times, but he's also wasn't raised in the Jedi Order where Kanan was. So it's a difference. And did I hear that there's a term for Jedi trained post Order 66? And was it Boken? I'm going to look that up really quick. Boken Jedi. Looking at Wikipedia resource. Boken Jedi was a term used for fallen Jedi Padawans who were taken on and trained after the okay, so that's right. So Ezra is a Boken Jedi versus Kanan is not. All right, so after he ignites his lightsaber and everything. Ezra turns to ask Sabine a question. He's like, Ahsoka, or Sabine, has Ahsoka ever taught you how to? And then he notices that Sabine's not there anymore. So I don't know what he was necessarily going to ask. Probably build a lightsaber or something like that. But he kind of stops in his tracks when he notices Sabine isn't there. So then Ezra asks Hu Yang about, so what happened between them? So obviously he kind of, Ezra's sensing that there's some kind of tension with Sabine, probably because of the comment he made about relationships between a master and apprentice. So he asks, okay, what happened with them there? And then Hu Yang responds and tells him that Ahsoka was worried that Sabine was training for the wrong reasons after what happened on Mandalore, referring to the Night of a Thousand Tears, where the Empire purged the entire planet, killing hundreds of thousands of Mandalorians, which includes Sabine's family. Ahsoka felt if Sabine unlocked her potential, she'd become dangerous. So he's just kind of giving, Hu Yang is kind of giving Ezra insight about that situation. All right, so we then cut to Sabine. She's outside of the ship. So the ship's still flying over, and they're kind of just hanging out on top of the ship as it's flying. That'd be pretty cool. Ahsoka tells her that her gamble paid off, meaning her coming out there with the risk of Thrawn returning. And Sabine realizes that Ahsoka knows what she's done. So Sabine is obviously ashamed that she adhered to the terms of Bayland and risking Thrawn returning, all in an effort to come find Ezra with the hopes of rescuing him. But she does realize that she's jeopardized. I don't know if the fate is the right word, but the security of her own galaxy for her own selfish reasons. So then after Ahsoka says that, Sabine responds that she's sorry. She's sorry for what she's done, essentially. And Sabine, oh yeah, she says she's sorry, and Ahsoka responds she knows that she's sorry. And Sabine's like, wait, so you're not mad about this? And then I wrote down these quotes because I thought it was pretty cool. But so Ahsoka responds, over the years, I've made my share of difficult choices. Often no one understood my reasons except my master, Anakin. He always stood by me, even when no one else did. And that's alluding to that whole conflict about the bombing of the Jedi Temple and everyone believing that Ahsoka did it, and the only one that believed she didn't was Anakin. So he stood by her that whole time. And then she goes on, that's why no matter what happens next, I'm going to be there for you. And Sabine kind of gives a nod to that. And then Ahsoka asks, now have you kept up with your training? And Sabine says, I try. I mean, I do. And I love that. That was kind of a reference to Empire Strikes Back when Yoda says, do or do not, there is no try. So I love that she phrased it that way. I try. I mean, I do. And then she states that she's kept up with her saber training, but Ahsoka says that being a Jedi isn't just about lightsabers. And she tells her to trust in the Force. So then Ezra comes out to see them on top of the ship and to tell them that he's finished the lightsaber. And then as he's kind of speaking to this, over the horizon, 2 TIE fighters, you hear them approaching, and they look out, and sure enough, they're over the horizon coming, and then they start engaging them. And in that firing, the TIE fighters damage Ahsoka's ship, and it kind of starts to fall towards the planet. And as it's falling, that caravan of the Noki is still under them. So Ezra and Ahsoka, they kind of rush to get under the ship, and they position themselves to use the force to kind of keep the ship afloat, to protect the Noti caravan. And meanwhile, Sabine and Hu Yang are trying to get the ship up and running, to engage the TIE fighters back. And then they get it, and the ship, it almost seemed like not only were Ezra and Ahsoka lifting up, once Sabine got the ship going, it's almost like they force pushed it to give it a little boost. And then it's flying towards the TIE fighters, and it ends up just kind of flying right through them. Like, it doesn't, I'm trying to remember if they actually shot at them, but it doesn't really matter. So they fly through the two TIE fighters, which destroys the TIE fighters, but consequentially, it damaged the ship enough where it started crashing down towards the planet itself. So it crashes down, but it doesn't explode or anything. Both Sabine and Hu Yang are fine. You see them walking out. Hu Yang's kind of like analyzing the situation at the ship and like, oh boy. Meanwhile, Sabine walks back towards Ezra and Ahsoka. And then we cut to Enoch, which is the captain of Thrawn. He's got that cool gold face stormtrooper helmet. And he tells Thrawn that that there was a successful strike on the shuttle, meaning Ahsoka's shuttle, before they lost contact with the fighters. And Thrawn was like, that's an acceptable outcome. You know, his mission in hand. I mean, overall mission is to get out of there, but just knowing where the threat is a success to Thrawn. So he's like, all right, it's an acceptable outcome, and we should just consider those ships lost. We lost contact with them, so let's just assume they're gone. And then he asks for the location of that attack, figuring Ahsoka and her ship or whatever threat is there is at that position. And then he tells Enoch to prepare for ground assault at that location. Or wait, not at that location, just prepare for an assault. Then we cut to Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka. They're kind of riding their mounts. They're looking to stop Thrawn. So they're just going to meet him head on, go to the Star Destroyer, and take care of business there. So as they're riding off, Hu Yang gives the, our well-known Star Wars saying of "May the Force be with you." So then at the Star Destroyer, Morgan tells the Night Troopers that the blessing of the Great Mothers shall protect them against the Jedi. She orders them off to fight them, and then Thrawn approaches from behind all of them, and then talks with Morgan and asks if those are the volunteers. And it's interesting he uses the term volunteers. And he also asks if they were made aware of the sacrifice they were about to make. And then Morgan responds, "For you." And then Thrawn interjects and he's like, "For the Empire." But I think this is an interesting exchange because it makes Thrawn seem concerned about the troopers, because I don't think many Imperial officers would care if they were made known of the sacrifice they were about to make. And using the term volunteers and just how this all played out, it was like, all right, well, I just want to make sure that they know that they're going to die. Like, and that I don't know if feel bad is the right way to put it, but he's just kind of humanizing the situation. And obviously Morgan says, yes, they were. So this is something that they are willing to do for Thrawn or for the Empire. But just fascinating. It shows that Thrawn does care for the units that he's superior to, his regiment, essentially. Respect is important to him one way or another. All right. So then we cut to Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka. They arrive at Thrawn's Star Destroyer. Well, not at the Star Destroyer. They're at the tower that is docked with the Star Destroyer. They're kind of off to the distance. They see it. And Ezra tells Ahsoka that Thrawn found this place. He woke up the witches, rebuilt the starship. It wasn't safe to come here alone. And then Ahsoka responds, telling him that he is not alone anymore. And they will try the front door. So I really like the line, woke up the witches. So that makes you wonder, were these witches? So were these great mothers, or, well, first of all, is he referring to the great mothers that are with him? Or two, to Dustin's point about what's in the caskets, are they Night Sisters? Were these individuals, were these Night Sisters or great mothers, were they in some kind of hibernation mode on this planet? And then when he arrived, he kind of brought them up. If I recall, thinking back to Rebels, were some of the dead like in almost an amber, so like a fossil type of thing? Am I just making that up? Or for some reason I recall that like they're in some gold, almost fossil looking thing. Either way, were these Night Sisters or great mothers, were they active on this planet, or did Thrawn kind of bring them to, and then now they're awake, and then they're trying to return back to Dathomir with this army? Who knows? We'll find out maybe in season 2, if there is a season 2, but more to be said about that. But I just thought that line was interesting. He woke up the witches. What does that mean? So then a droid tells Thrawn that a comm scan sees 2 targets coming from the north. Thrawn tells the droid to just rain hellfire upon them, and that there will be no negotiating with the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker. So like, he doesn't care. Just take them out, rain hellfire of lasers upon them and to destroy them. Meantime, they're just going to try to get out of there. So the crew ride closer to the ship and the tower, and when they, as they get closer and closer, they're getting fired upon, and they're like dodging the bullets left and right, the destruction, narrowly escaping danger. And as they get closer to the gate, both Sabine and Ezra use the Force to kind of open the gate, and then they narrowly get through. So Ahsoka's like, hey, get the door open, or one way or another, and so they use the Force. And then once they get in, they kind of pan to Thrawn, and he has this upset look to his face, and he then asks to dispatch the night troopers, and he'll inform the great mothers that it is time. So going back to that, volunteers, sacrifice. So I mean, now that we've watched, we know what happens, but this is his way of saying, okay, these great mothers are going to use their magic to do something when something happens to these troopers, which we'll get to. So the night troopers, they start, wait, what does my note say? All right, so the night troopers, they're battling the crew inside the tower, and it's really cool scene because you got the 3, Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka. Initially, they're all using their lightsabers. You got green that Sabine's using, you got blue that Ezra's using, and then the white of Ahsoka. I thought that was just really cool. Now, I spoke to kind of the graphics on this situation. It seemed very studio-y, but the image depiction itself of these 3 Jedi with different saber colors fighting all these troopers, that was really cool. So they're initially using sabers, and then as they're fighting, Ahsoka's like, Sabine, use your blasters. And then she goes to her blasters. So Ezra and Ahsoka are kind of deflecting blaster bolts, and then Sabine's kind of like taking down the troopers. They end up wiping all of them out. So they kill every single one of them. And then they're starting to relax a little bit. And then it cuts to the Great Mothers, and they're doing this sort of chanting, conducting some sort of spell. And then we cut back to the troopers, and we see that they're coming back to life. They're becoming zombies. So, and we've seen this in Rebels where the Great Mother casts a sort of spell that brings up the fallen Night Sisters, and then they help the current Night Sisters fend off Count Dooku and the droids. So this isn't the first time we've seen zombies in Star Wars. So if you haven't seen any of that before and you're kind of taken back by like, why? Okay, we're zombies in Star Wars. What won't Disney go to, or what won't the show? Well, we've seen it before, so this isn't something new. However, to our crew of Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine, Ahsoka was like, have we ever seen this before? And Ezra's like, no, this is new. And then Sabine's like, lucky us. And then they started fighting the zombie troopers, but the zombie troopers just won't die. Whether they deflect the bolts or slash them, they fall, but then they get back up. So just, they're not having luck in killing off these things. So because of that, they start retreating into the tower. And then when they get to a certain location, they seal the door to kind of protect themselves. And then after that, they hear this loud noise and the kind of a rumbling going on in the tower. And what's happening is a Star Destroyer is now docking with the Eye of Zion. So starting those preparations to jump into hyperspace. Morgan tells Thrawn that they are ready to depart. And Thrawn says the Jedi are advancing swiftly, and if they get on the ship, it will be problematic. And then this is, when we were speaking earlier, when Thrawn was like, we need more time. And he's essentially telling Morgan to stay back, and he needs to fight them off. He needs to buy them more time. And she looks a little like, like, oh crap, I'm screwed. But she says she understands. And then Thrawn states, for the Empire. And Morgan kind of bows in response and doesn't say anything directly to him. But then after he walks away, she responds under her breath, for Dathomir. So she will stay behind and potentially sacrifice herself, but she's not doing it for Thrawn. She's doing it for the outcome of her people, her home planet. She's doing it for Dathomir. So I thought that was pretty neat. So then we cut back to Ezra, Ahsoka, and Sabine, and more night troopers arrive, and they bust through the walls, and they're advancing upon the Jedi, and the Jedi continue on, and as they continue on, then they encounter Morgan. So like all these events, they're really, this is where I was talking about like the fighting, the pacing of it was really quick, which is okay, but it just takes away from the dramatics a little bit. And so they encounter Morgan, and she's standing there, and she has the blade of Tolzien. And Ahsoka says to Sabine and Ezra that she'll handle it, and that they need to go stop Thrawn. So they kind of resist a little bit, but then Ahsoka insists. So then Ezra and Sabine go on to find Thrawn. And then Morgan and Ahsoka, they start dueling, and this was just a fantastic fight scene. Like, I love these lightsaber duels, and just the darkness of the tower, and I think it was more the white of Ahsoka's sabers, and the white of her clothes. Like, just everything just looked very beautiful. I was very impressed by these visual effects. So the Star Destroyer starts making some loud noises again, and it starts kind of moving, and then Thrawn turns to the pilot droid and was like, all right, take us out. The Star Destroyer is leaving when Sabine and Ezra kind of arrive. So they're on top of the tower, and you see this view of like one of the decks or like a docking bay of the Star Destroyer, and it's just kind of slowly moving away, moving away. It says Ezra kind of looks at it and is like, I can make that jump, or I can't make that jump. And then Sabine interjects and says, yes, you can. Meaning with the support of her using the Force. So he will jump and Sabine will force push or use the Force to help guide Ezra up onto the Star Destroyer. So this was kind of going to Dustin's point about like, how does she have the power to do this, but can't grab her lightsaber? So Ezra runs and leaps, and Sabine kind of gives him an extra little push. And then you hear in the background that Force music. So I thought that was really cool. It just gives me goosebumps when I hear that. So you knew something good was happening, meaning they made it seem like he fell short, but you hear that music and it's like, all right, no, he's probably okay. And sure enough, he made it just enough. So he's holding on to the ledge. And there's two like night troopers there, and he kind of jumps up and he deals with them and throws one of them off. And then meanwhile, Ahsoka continues to duel Morgan, and then more troopers arrive and they're firing upon them. And they end up where Sabine is close by. So they're now up at the top of that tower. And Ezra calls out to Sabine, like, Sabine, jump, meaning to come join him. And she's looking at him, but then she looks back at Ahsoka. So she's torn. Like, does she go with Ezra and help stop Thrawn, or does she help what seems to be a struggling Ahsoka in the fight? And then we go to Morgan, and she tells Ahsoka her friends are dead and that she'll die here alone. And then there's this kind of dramatic pause, and then you hear a voice that suddenly says, not alone. And as that said, then Sabine comes to Ahsoka's aid. So that was Sabine saying that, meaning she's not leaving her master's side. And Ahsoka continues to fight Morgan while Sabine takes out the troopers. And then in the battle of Ahsoka and Morgan destroys one of Ahsoka's sabers, but then Ahsoka is able to disarm Morgan from her blade of Talzin, and then uses that blade along with her lightsaber to strike Morgan down with 2 cuts, an extra one to make sure that they're dead, and essentially killing Morgan. And as soon as that happens, then they cut to the Great Mothers, and you can tell that the mothers sense that she has fallen. And then sure enough, they tell Thrawn that Morgan is dead. And then Thrawn's response was, she has done what was required. So meaning like kind of solidifying that they knew that she was being sent to her death. Like she was a pawn, that this was what she was meant to do. Ahsoka asks Sabine where Ezra is, and she says he's going home, meaning he made it onto the Star Destroyer, and he's going to get back to the galaxy. And then they say, we need to get out of here. So meanwhile, Thrawn orders to open fire on the tower. So he's like, screw it. We're just going to destroy the whole thing. Get rid of them. And so they're firing upon where Sabine, Ahsoka, and their own troopers are. So they're like, the hell with the troopers that are there. The hell with anyone there. Let's just destroy it. So they take down the tower and all the troopers. But Ahsoka and Sabine, they jump off the ledge, landing on Ahsoka's ship, which is being flown by Hu Yang. And then they escape as the tower comes crumbling down with all the troopers on it. And then they're flying towards the Star Destroyer to catch up with them, because that Star Destroyer is their vehicle home too. So it's like, all right, we need to get there and to stop Thrawn and to be able to get home ourselves. And As Ahsoka's ship approaches the Star Destroyer, Thrawn asks the pilot's droid to open a channel, essentially to hail Ahsoka's ship to establish communication or a contact. And I thought this was a really cool exchange. So then Thrawn says to Ahsoka, Ahsoka Tano, allow me to commend you on your efforts today. You've been quite a worthy opponent. I regret we haven't met face to face, and perhaps now we never shall. Still, I know you because I knew your master. I concluded your strategies would be similar. Master apprentice, probably taught similar manners. So one wonders just how similar you might become. Perhaps this is where a Ronin such as yourself belongs. Today, victory is mine. Long live the Empire. So I thought this was really interesting because Thrawn is an intelligent person and he analyzes, he assesses the situation. He really tries to get to the core of who you are, and whether that's through art or culture or whatnot. So that probably means he understands weaknesses pretty well, strengths and weaknesses. And he probably knows that Ahsoka's weakness, or one of her weaknesses, is the fear of falling in the path that Anakin Skywalker did in becoming Darth Vader, meaning like there's guilt there that Ahsoka has. And, they kind of played on that throughout this whole season of the show. Ahsoka's guilt for what happened to Anakin Skywalker. Like, could she have done something if she never left to prevent him from falling to the dark side? So what when he says one wonders just how similar you might become, I felt that was like a little jab trying to play into the weakness of Ahsoka a little bit, kind of unhinge her. And if you unhinge someone, they become a little more reckless and a little more easy to defeat. And then as soon as he says, long live the Empire, the engines ignite and they jump into hyperspace, going back towards that original galaxy that we are all familiar with. Ahsoka's ship kind of gets caught up in that aftershock of that jump, but they are able to escape harm, and nothing comes of that. So then back on the surface of the planet, we see the Noti, and they're working on their machines. And when Sabine and Ahsoka, they approach them on their dog mounts, while Hu Yang is flying the ship overhead, and the creatures are happy to see them. So they're rejoicing, they're celebrating, they're like, yay, they're back. I mean, it's not Ezra, but the other two are there. And then Ahsoka hears a bird. You hear this bird in the background, and then Ahsoka kind of turns and we see the white owl. So I'm assuming that's Morai. At least I believe that's what we're supposed to feel, that's the same owl that we see follow Ahsoka in Rebels, and I believe Clone Wars. Yeah, Clone Wars as well, because I think that's supposed to signify the sister, because ever since the sister sacrificed herself in the Mortis trilogy to spare Ahsoka, then that's when that owl kind of came into creation. It's like maybe a reincarnation of the sister, or just very similar to when Kanan passed and you have that Loth Wolf. So I think we're led to believe that that's Morai, which is a connection with the sister. And there's more to that coming up here. So then cut to Shin, and she's riding her dog mount, and she approaches a local raider camp. She's kind of up on a hill overlooking this camp, and she ignites her saber and she kind of raises it up, kind of in a like, I'm your leader now type of thing. I believe this is signifying that she is communicating to them like, I'm here to lead you and to help you. And it's her way of gaining power. I know that Balin kind of alluded to her power would come through the Empire, so I don't know if she's going a different path from that, or maybe Empire doesn't necessarily mean the Empire we're familiar with. She's starting her own empire or her own group, just becoming a leader one way or another. And then we cut to Balin, and you first see him and he's kind of on this mountain. You can see that there's kind of like a statue kind of by him, or some kind of structure resembling a face, but you can't really make it out at that point. But he's obviously on top of a mountain, and then he's looking out into the distance, and the camera pans away, and it ends up, what he's standing by is the statue of the father. So talking about the owl being the sister, Balin's on a statue of the father, excuse me. And then as it pans out, you see the son is our right, or to the father's left of the picture. And then to our left is the sister, but the head is missing. So it's like a decapitated statue. So the Mortis trilogy gods are right there, which was awesome. Like, we're getting a live action Mortis trilogy reference here, which alludes to, there was something that was drawing Balin in this whole story. So this is kind of significant or symbolic. And is it these gods that are speaking to Balin, or is it one of the gods, or is it something else that's maybe affiliated with them, like the mother? Who knows? But I think it leads to a pretty cool story that's yet to come. So then as it continues to pan on, we see he's looking out to something. And then when the camera views of what he's looking at, there's a mountain in the distance, and there's this beacon of light that's kind of flashing, kind of showing that something is calling out there. And the statue of the father is, I think, is pointing exactly in that direction. So directing Balin, this is where you need to go. This is what's being called to you. Now, what that is, I don't know, but I am fascinated to find out. Is it the sun? Which I think that would be really fascinating. So from the show Clone Wars, the voice of the sun is none other than the same person who does the voice of Maul from that show, who was credited in this show. So it makes you wonder, okay, I know everyone was thinking, okay, that was Force Unleashed character. I'm spacing on his name. Let's see. Which was Vader's apprentice for a while. Starkiller. That's it. So I know everyone was speculating that Starkiller was going to show up in this because of the credited actor of Sam Witwer. But now that they're showing the son and knowing that Sam Witwer voiced the son, maybe it was more alluding to that. Who knows? We'll see. But I think it's really cool because we see the owl, which means the sister. We see Anakin, which again, he reappears at the end, which I'll get to, but we've seen Anakin throughout this season. And if you've seen the Mortis trilogy from the Clone Wars, the father was speaking to Anakin, or was, bringing about the situation in the hopes that Anakin would take over his position to maintain the balance between the light and the dark. So the sister represents the light side of the Force. the son represents the dark side of the force, and the father represents the balance between. So he's the one that keeps balance between his son and daughter. And that's what Anakin was brought there for, was to maintain that balance, because the father knew his end was coming near, which sure enough it did. And the sister who died in that trilogy, so is Ahsoka taking over as the sister. So then that leads to the son. Maybe Balin will be taking on this position. Purely speculating. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Probably not, but just something fascinating to think about. Either way, we're going to get more of a story from these gods in the Mortis trilogy, and I can't wait to get more of that, because that's such a fascinating concept. And I wonder too, like, could we be getting Abeloth? Could we be getting the mother? I don't know if they would dive into the EU like that, but that would be pretty cool. So then we cut to Thrawn Star Destroyer. He's standing with the Great Mothers and his captain, and the captain tells him they are approaching Dathomir. And after he tells him, Thrawn is there, and he's kind of looking over like a docking bay type of thing, and you just see the cargo, which the cargo is all those caskets, or it looks to be caskets. So then is this kind of an undead army that he has created or is putting together with the Great Mothers. Then we cut to 2 A-Wings leading a shuttle to Home 1. So that's the New Republic cruiser that we're well familiar with. The shuttle boards as Hera and the New Republic officers approach, and they kind of draw their guns, anticipating it's like an Imperial officer or some kind of bad guy. And a single night trooper walks out of the shuttle. And then, interestingly, Chopper, so the droid we're well familiar with from the Ghost Crew, rolls up unafraid, like he knows who this person is. And he just kind of starts beeping and whatnot to him. And then the trooper takes off the helmet, and it ends up being Ezra himself. So he smiles at Hera, and then Hera and the New Republic officer or troopers lower their guns. Hera asks, Ezra? And then he responds, hi, Hera, I'm home. And then we cut away. We cut back to the Nodi camp with Sabine and Ahsoka. Ahsoka is looking out in the distance, and Sabine approaches her and tells her they are almost packed and ready. Ahsoka tells her that she did well. But then Sabine's like, did I? Thrawn got away. And then Ahsoka responds, and thanks to you, Ezra got home. So it's kind of like Sabine provides a negative, but then Ahsoka supporting her and reinforces her with a positive. Sabine responds, I hope so. Ahsoka says he did. So she feels or senses that he got home. Ezra is where he needs to be. And so are we. It's time to move on. And then you see Ahsoka kind of walking away, and Sabine senses something in the distance, like something is calling her. And this is what I was talking with Dustin, like, is the same thing that was calling after Balin now calling after Sabine? Or is she sensing what we're about to see here? Ahsoka asks her, what is it? And then Sabine responds, I feel like, dramatic pause. And she's like, nothing. And then she says, just shadows and starlight. And then she walks away, and then Ahsoka looks out, and then in the background you hear her theme song playing, which was pretty cool. And then she kind of nods in the distance, gives a kind of almost like a little smile, and then she starts walking back to the camp. Then the camera pans away a little bit, and then the last image we get of this show is a Force ghost of Anakin watching over her, and he smiles. So it's signifying that he's there, he's watching over her. I know there's questions about when Ahsoka was dueling Balin and got defeated and fell into the water. Like, did she actually go to the world between worlds, or was she just like knocked out and she was having visions before coming to? Which leads you to question, like, all right, was Anakin actually there, or was this a vision, or was this the Force speaking to her? Either way, with this last scene, that tells you that one way or another, Anakin is there. Anakin is there watching over, and it means that he is going to continue his involvement with Ahsoka, whether it's, I don't know if it's necessarily training or just through presence, but kind of like what Obi-Wan Kenobi was to Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So being a figure there, being a support, being a teacher still after he is gone. So then after that scene, cut to credits, and there's a new credit song, so that was interesting. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but thought it was interesting that for the first 7 episodes we had one credit song, and then for the last episode it was something completely different. All right, so I just spoke through a lot right there, and my throat is kind of sore. So I apologize if I rushed through that. My original intention was kind of go through that in today's episode with Dustin, but with the time that Dustin had, kind of want to talk through his opinions on how this all ended. I'm sure in either the next episode or an upcoming episode, we'll regroup and kind of talk more about the show holistically and overall. Where are we going from here? What does this mean? And maybe what we can see from this show in other sources that are content that's yet to come out. So I have to say, I really enjoyed the Ahsoka show. Not every episode was like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 hit. Like I said, the first 6 were fantastic. Like, couldn't expect much more out of those. Had a few gripes, but overall, amazing. The last 2, good, but not great in my opinion. It's still great in their own way, but just not as impactful as the first 6. But overall, very impressed with the show. I feel like it's kind of, trying to get Star Wars back onto a Star Wars track, if that's a way to put it. I feel like the show was kind of bringing fans together a little more. It really felt Star Wars. It had that same like mystical feeling, that that winky feeling, that magical feeling of Star Wars that we've felt in the past. Was it a little on the Rebels and Clone Wars and cartoony level? A little bit, yeah. Suspension of disbelief was maybe not always there, but on the whole, I very much approve of the show. It was one of my favorite shows that's come out for Star Wars, so I'll be looking forward to a season 2. But all right, with that and it being late, I will wrap all this up. First, I will speak towards our handles, our social media handles. So you can find us on Twitter at DetBlockAA23pod, on Instagram at detention_block_AA_23, and then our Facebook group and YouTube channel is Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. Bring us your likes, comments, follows, subscriptions, downloads, reviews. Tell us what you think about Ahsoka. Tell us what you think about this podcast episode. Anything on your mind, thoughts, opinions, all of it. Those reviews too, those really go a long way in getting our name out there amongst the hundreds of Star Wars podcasts out there. Any little thing that you can do, we greatly appreciate it. We enjoy doing this, and we look forward to continue doing it. And any little thing that you can do really helps us along the way. So with that, have a great rest of your day, rest of your evening, rest of your week. And I know that we don't have any Star Wars shows or movie content to come out until I think Skeleton Crew is the next one. I think that was originally supposed to release in November, but with everything going on, probably won't be until 2024, early 2024. So looking forward to that coming out, and we can talk some more Star Wars content, bring you reviews. Until then, look forward to whatever we have to discuss next. Until next time.